Okay, it is 2 o'clock, so we are going to start. So first of all, I'm really excited about this webinar. We have taken a lot of time and really tried to make this impactful for all of our listeners, you know, for different points of your journey. So try to be all inclusive with that. So my name is Jessica Wyman. I joined Lean Focus in December as a talent search partner. I'm going to take a minute to talk about Lean Focus for those of you that are not aware of us and what we do. So Lean Focus is a consulting firm, and I say that very loosely because really it's comprised of experienced practitioners that have lived in the trenches. They have lived in most of your shoes, done the tough roles, and now they're using their passion and their expertise of lean and partnering with businesses that want to improve their overall lean. It could be their business system and culture. So we offer full business system development, culture transformations, training workshops, and Kaizen events. And then on the other side of the business is talent solutions team, which I am part of. And a lot of times what happens is when our practitioners are working with the clients, they are also realizing that they may want or need lean experience, and that's kind of our niche. So we engage and we quickly find our clients some top talent to fill their critical roles. So a little bit about me. Previous to Lean Focus, I spent 20 years in human resources. I was at Pratt & Whitney for 13 of those years. It's a Fortune 500 company. And then I left to go to Advent. And then from there, I moved out of state and joined GE Current. Both Advent and GE Current were carve-outs from larger companies and then owned by private equity firms. So I have a strong understanding of lean through Pratt & Whitney. We had our own internal program called ACE, Achieving Competitive Excellence. So today we're going to discuss you and how to make sure that you are as prepared as possible to crush your interview for your dream job. So, okay. Oh, sorry, that was my background. Okay, so questions, definitely ask questions. We are really looking forward to questions. I feel like this is important topic to a lot of people. So to ask questions, you can go to chat, click the drop down, and then say question to staff. So definitely want as many questions as we can get. Obviously, we're not going to be able to answer all of them live, but what we do is we will send individual responses to the questions to each person that asks it. And then also we will showcase it on our LinkedIn, certain questions, and I'll show you that at the end. So we are now going to get into the presentation. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about you having a standout resume, how to handle any resume red flags that you have, of course, how to crush the interview, some interview tips, how do you handle adversity and failure, and then also how to articulate your lean journey to show your high impact and your lean experience. And you always want to ask questions at the end of the interview. So we have added some insightful questions as examples for you, and then making sure that you finish strong, knowing your elevator speech to make sure you end the interview highlighting all of your contributions and why you're the right person for the role. So first, let's start with your standout resume. You want to begin each bullet with an action word. And if you don't have, things like drove, implemented, developed, improved, these are powerful action words that you're going to want to include. If you want to see online, there are several lists of action words. So just type in action words for resumes, you'll get a giant list. And then each bullet, you definitely want to make sure that they are results focused and it doesn't read like a job description. It's not a list of your job duties. So in Lean, right, we're constantly measuring things and results matter. So show percentages, show dollar sign savings, and then also make sure that you have Lean terminology throughout your resume, right? That's kind of the how you reached your results. Make sure that your resume is crisp and concise. People are so busy and they really don't have time. So make sure that it doesn't read like a book and that people can very quickly look at it and get what they need from it. And also that it has some white space, right? And the goal is to have 2 lines maximum per each bullet. So trying to be, again, concise. And then 11 font we recommend as the smallest, and also proofreading for 0 defects. Your resume is often your first impression to accompany to the interviewer. So double check everything on your resume, read every single sentence, have somebody else double check it for you. Make sure you're looking for text sizes. Sometimes they're different. Make sure there's no misspellings, grammars. Check your dates. Sometimes we'll see that dates don't align and that's just an error. And also check your contact information. I have an embarrassing story that one of my first roles, I applied and my contact phone number was wrong. So that was extremely embarrassing. Needless to say, I did not get the job. So it is important. Again, the resume is your first impression. And also make sure that it's appealing to the eye. So a nice format, and again, that it flows with the white space. Add training and certificates to the bottom under education, and also have references available. So before submitting any references to people, make sure that your references, you have their permission, and just give them a heads up of the company that will be calling them, the role that you're going for, is if they can be prepared. The more prepared they are, the better they will be able to give you a good reference. Okay, so again, I think the key from this slide is your resume is your first impression, and that it should always be able to be viewed quickly to get the information that the interviewer needs. So here are some examples of some great formats available out there. They're available for free and also very inexpensive. And they really do help you stand out. Remember that HR, hiring managers, recruiters, they're looking at so many resumes. So these are kind of nice. Again, the template is nice and it stands out, and it's also easy to read. So notice the order of the resumes. This may have changed. You always want to start with your profile. So that should be a strong paragraph describing you. So it can read professional profile, leadership profile, executive profile, and then it jumps into a summary of your skills. This is really important. This is where you want to, one, make sure that they are aligned to the role that you are applying for. You may want to change a couple based on that. And these are also, again, it's front and center. This is a quick look to see what experiences they have. And it's also really important to have these, recruiters, internal and external. Once you've applied for a role, they are searchable. So a lot of times recruiters will do word searches to get candidates within their database already for other roles that maybe you have not applied for. And then education, training, certificates is at the bottom of the page. You want to make sure that you are highlighting the lean tools in your LinkedIn profile, in your skills section, and also throughout your resume. So in your resume, you're going to have an action bullet with results, and then it should follow how you got those results. And hopefully a lot of times we're through lean skills and lean methodologies. So here is just a list for your reference and to think about. These are, common and key lean skills. So I'm just going to pause for a moment so you can kind of look at these, maybe jot a few down that you know that you have used and want to make sure that it's in your resume. Okay, this is an example that we put together of what good looks like. It is crisp, concise, you can see white space, it's appealing to the eye, it has a strong profile, which I'll give you a moment to read. And then it's got the key skills, which include lean as well as leadership. It's result-based bullets, and it shows value with the results. So I'm just going to go through a couple bullets and show you how they read. So I improved productivity by 24% in 1 year. So that is the result. And then it is, I'm reading this one right here, and then it is followed with the how, right? With reduction of 10% conversion costs by improving processes and by applying Kaizen events and lean manufacturing tools. I'm gonna read the one below it. Drove 1.5 million in addition revenue by reducing how, right? So that's the what. I drove 1.5 additional revenue. How did I do it? By reducing large product setup time by 40% with a Kaizen event, implementing Kanban system, and removing production complexity. So those are examples of great bullets. You want to start with the results, the numbers, and then kind of go into the how. And then I also just want to point out, because we're going to talk about a little later, below the bullets, if you have a lot of different roles, a lot of experiences, and you just don't want to have a 5-page resume, which I don't recommend, you can, this is common, people will say previous experience and then just kind of put the summary here. Mechanical engineer at X company, operations manager. So this just gives the reader, whether it be the recruiter, hiring manager, kind of overall your experience from earlier in your career. Your LinkedIn profile. So as I've been in this role, I've noticed that a lot of people are not updating their profile. So I urge everybody to make sure that you update your profile. You're going to use the tips for resumes, exactly what we did. I'm going to go back one, right? You are going to want to make sure pretty much exactly this is going to go into your LinkedIn profile, right? Your executive profile, professional profile, and then you want to make sure that you list all of the skills. And you're going to use the same process here to make sure that it's in your LinkedIn. So keep in mind that LinkedIn is a professional networking site. So think about the platform and your intended audience and make sure you have a professional quality photo. You don't need a photo, not everybody has a photo, but if you do, just make sure it's professional quality. And then again, like I just said, your profile, your skills are going to be right front and center. And these are also searchable by anybody that is a recruiter in LinkedIn. They can type the skills of people that they are looking for, and they will get profiles to go through. So again, it's very important to have the key skills and terminology in your resume. And another thing that we have noticed, there is a way that you can, if you have several roles with one company, which is very common, it will, if you have it each role at a quick glance, it can look choppy or like maybe you have been job jumping. So recommended, this is from my profile, is that you put the company and then the roles underneath it. So it's like under one company umbrella. So that is a recommendation and just kind of how it looks in LinkedIn, so you can tell that it was all through one company. Okay, resume red flags. So I'm going to spend some time on this and just kind of talk through a few of them. So there are some red flags that companies and recruiters will look at and want to ask for explanations. So I think the most important thing to remember as we're talking about this, your takeaway, is the key is the ease in which you explain it, and less is more. So you want your answers to be shorter. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So if you're at ease and you own it, it will most likely put the interviewer at ease as well. And if you're uncomfortable and you're stumbling and you can just tell, so that will also bring concern to the interviewer. So it's oftentimes when candidates over explain or try to explain too much that we want to know and ask questions and dig a little deeper. So again, talk with ease, less is more, just kind of a shorter answer, and we'll give you some examples. And another tip, another huge takeaway from this slide is to never speak negatively about the companies that you've worked for and the people that you've worked for or with. This is more common than I expected, and it just doesn't reflect well on you, right? And companies are going to assume that you will do the same if they hire you. So let's dive into the red flags. So time gaps between jobs. If you have space in your resume, something that I have seen that's helpful is adding one line bullet at the end of the role. It could say recruited for growth or promotion opportunity at X, and which would be the next company that you go to. If there's a time gap, relocated due to spouse's job. So if it makes sense, it's a judgment call if you want to put it in your resume. If it makes sense, you can do that. I've seen that. A lot of times a time gap is because somebody got laid off. I want to be clear, there is nothing wrong with that. It is so much more common than you think. So again, if this is something you have difficulty explaining, then someone will be, your interviewer is going to be uncomfortable with that. So, you can say just very quickly, unfortunately, I was impacted by a mass layoff. The company financials or stability due to that, or, due to sales impact because of COVID. So again, just kind of short and sweet explanation. Another reason is if you resigned, or you were terminated. And a lot of times people will say, oh, I left that company because it's not a good fit. So that's a loaded statement that can be dangerous. So just some tips. If you go in with it was not a good fit, just make sure that you are prepared for the next question, because there will absolutely be probing questions. Why wasn't it a good fit? And this can, can lead you down a negative path that you don't want to go through. So again, best way to handle it is, was talking to another company about a better opportunity, joined X company, and I'm grateful for the new opportunity. It's giving me XYZ. And then, as some things have changed, some have also stayed the same. So let's talk about short tenure and job hopping. So companies and recruiters are wary of short tenures and too many jumps. So I guess overall, I would say some advice and coaching is to be careful with this in your career, being at a job a year and a half, and going to the next one and doing the same thing. There's a lot, if it shows a trend or a pattern, that is going to bring concern. If it's one time, that's okay. Everyone's allowed a mistake, right? I joined this company. The leadership opportunity was not what we discussed and what I thought it would be, so I left and went to X. But if somebody's looking for a key lean leader, they will need reassurance that the person is going to stay and that they're committed to bring them through their journey. So it will be important to the client based on the role. So again, if you have short tenures, make sure you have a good explanation of why, and that, again, short and sweet. And then there's others that just should not be present, okay? So errors, again, it's your first impression. Your resume is reflective of your capability to present information, right? So errors in spelling and grammar and font sizes, they will be noticed and they will be considered sloppy. So just make sure that you go through it, or somebody else. It's just really not worth bringing a resume forward with errors. And then long paragraphs, again, the goal is 1 to 2 bullets, or 1 to 2 lines per bullet. If you've got long paragraphs, again, people are limited with their time. If your resume reads like a book, it's going to be a turnoff, and your accomplishments may be lost and overlooked. So really make sure that as you are going through your resume, you know what you want to showcase, and you keep it as clear and concise as you can, right? Start with the results and then kind of go into the how you got them. And resumes over 3 pages are not recommended. It may be necessary with highly technical roles, but for lean leadership roles and for most roles, it's definitely not recommended. I would say 3 pages if you absolutely have to. But again, shorten your previous career experiences. Again, you can kind of summarize in just a couple lines. Previous experience includes, and you can just say the job title and the company, or like the type of role. So you can shorten it that way. Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff on how to crush your interview. So interviewers are typically going to frame their questions around what they need, right? What are the traits and skills that are essential for success in this position? So use the job description for insights, because that's really going to tell you what they're looking for. Hopefully, we've seen some job descriptions that aren't as good. So, look for, as you go through the job description and you see these specific needs and skills, make sure that you think of an example for the key responsibilities listed, right? Kind of use those, and you can kind of, one, make sure that you've got that and use it as an example that you want to present of an accomplishment for an interview question. And you can also kind of turn those into interview questions, right? That's kind of where they're going to be focusing. And then another piece is know your resume and your accomplishments. I can guarantee more than half of us on this call don't remember what we ate for breakfast, never mind what we did 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago. So anytime you are actively searching for a role and you are out there, take the time to go through your resume and know everything. And you should also be able to articulate 1 to 2 key accomplishments in each role. So kind of go through and make sure you know offhand to 1 to 2 key accomplishments. And then super critical in your research is to research the company. You want to go in prepared and knowing about the company. So the best way to do that, again, their website, internet search, look at their stock. Are there any news or article information out there? Look up the leadership team. It's usually on their website, and then their LinkedIn profiles. Where are people coming from? What roles have they had? You know, make sure you know the company products and the footprint and revenues and their key customers, and just make sure you know industry. So what's going on in the industry of this company? Look for news and articles, and also tap into your network. Do you know anybody that's worked for this company? If you are working with a recruiter, do they have any insights to the company, the culture? So again, just make sure that you know your resume, get the clues and insights from the job description on where they're going to focus, and make sure you know about the company and take the time to do the research. Okay, crafting your story. The way you tell your story is more important than your resume. So, you know, just kind of some quick key tips is be specific and concise. Make sure you focus on your role, highlight business results, use positive examples, and then be prepared to respond to probing questions. So for any accomplishment that you provide or an example to interview questions, ask yourself, okay, what might they ask, right? So kind of bring it down to the next level and make sure you're prepared to answer those probing questions. So again, the way you tell your story is more important than your resume. So be prepared to provide framework on how to tell your story, and we're going to go over that specifically, and use your resume for your cliff notes, right? Your cliff notes of your experiences. So just some key strategies to keep in mind. You always want to tell a story in a positive manner and something with a positive spin. Don't use examples that lack a happy ending or may portray you as ineffective. And again, in a different way, don't sabotage yourself by being negative about yourself or the company or people that you've worked with. It's also important that you show energy and confidence and enthusiasm. And before we get into how to respond to questions, I have just a few more tips. Sometimes interviewers will ask like this really specific question, and you may not have a response to the specificness of the question. So just listen for the essence. What are they looking for? Are they looking for a failure? Are they looking for how I went in and implemented something? So just kind of get the gist of the question, and you can say, you know, I don't have a response specifically as specific as that, but I think what you're looking for is a failure, and I definitely have an example that I can provide for that. So that's a way to kind of get around when people ask like really specific questions that you might not have a response to. This is the STAR method. This is common. This is all over the internet. I've included the link on where I got that. So just to kind of go over the STAR method. So when you discuss your responses to interview questions, it's not the time to talk high level. And this is often a big issue and a failure of interviewees, right? They talk high level because they think they're going to talk too much. It's really important that you find the right balance because the interviewer needs to have the right amount of details to give appreciation to your situation, the problem. So you have to find the right balance of the detail without rambling on and losing your audience. Okay, so that's going to be the important key as you respond to each interview question. And also be aware as you're crafting the framework of your responses that interviewers are listening to you and they want to know how you think, how you approach situations, how you respond, how do you solve problems, how do you make decisions, and on and on. So they're really going to be looking for that. So you're going to want to just make sure you provide it in your responses. Okay, so now we're going to go into the STAR method, which starts with the situation. And that means you introduce the situation and set the context. So describe the situation again with enough detail to give it appreciation, but not too much detail or you lose your audience. So take the time to describe the situation without jumping right into the action and results. That's where people want to go, and they often don't give enough information. If you speak too highly and breeze over the problem, it can come across as you don't understand the larger business picture, and interviewers are definitely want to see that you have a grasp for the bigger picture. And then you get into the task, and this really is talking about the goal that you were working towards. What were the expectations? What were the challenges? And then you get into the actions. Explain what you did and how you did it. And then for this, you really want to focus, and this is a change, right? At work and in our roles, especially leadership roles, it's the team did this, and very team, couldn't have done it without the team. So when you're interviewing, this is really a time to focus on you and your role. Interviewers are going to be digging, and they want to come out of the interview understanding what your role was, what you did, how you approached it, your leadership style as you went through it. So just make sure that you're talking about that. An example is I quickly put together a cross-functional team and did a VSM event and Kaizen, followed it up with Kaizen events, worked with finance to understand more details around the data. So those are just some examples of the actions that you took. And then you get to the best part, right? You talk about the results. So don't be shy about the results and make sure, again, you're focused on the business impact. How did it improve the business? So talk ratios, talk percentages, talk dollar savings. And then also this, so again, obviously what you accomplished, but very important what you learned. So as you're thinking about the examples you're going to provide, make sure you kind of also reflect on what you learned from each of those situations and problems. And after you provide a response to an interview, you can always ask for feedback. You can ask, is this the kind of information that you were looking for, or would you like me to provide a different example? And you can read your audience. So sometimes you may definitely want to ask that. Sometimes it might not be necessary, but you can definitely, that's a good way to make sure that you've answered it and they've got all that they need. Okay, so as you're thinking about your interview, there's always key areas that you can count on, right? That you will be asked. So always go into an interview. These are 10 key areas with examples. So I'm going to highlight a few. Make sure you have key and relevant accomplishments around, the key responsibilities and deliverables in the job descriptions or through conversations maybe that you've had with your recruiter. Lean implementations, culture change, how you, the results, the kind of the what driving results, and then kind of how you did that. Talk about your leadership style, some lean tools and methodologies that you used, and then a failure. A failure is a very, very common question, and what they're looking for, what we're all looking for there is, how did you handle it and how did you recover? And then problem solving is also a common one, but all of these are kind of key areas that you will most likely get a question in. I'm just gonna hold so you can look at it for a little while. Okay. And also some lean specific, we wanted to provide you with insightful questions that around lean and continuous improvement for you to reflect on, so you can prepare for a lean leader interview. So a lot of times you'll get the question, tell me about your lean journey, which we'll go into more, right? When did you believe, when did you start drinking the Kool-Aid? When did you know that lean was the way to drive results? Also, how did you address situations where you've been put in a situation where they've had lean in the past and it's failed? So now you're going into a situation where lean has failed, people are frustrated, they're reluctant. Why are we trying another time? It already didn't work, right? So how you kind of navigated through that situation. Again, biggest failure. This one happens to be in launching lean or a lean enterprise. And again, what did you learn from it? Another is describe your leadership and influencing style. This is always a hard one, so we have a slide to kind of talk about this and help you navigate through that. And then talent, right? What is your experience assessing talent? How do you make sure you've got the right people and the right roles and this journey is going to be successful? Okay, practice, 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 and then practice again. Okay, so how do you practice? Ask somebody to do a mock interview with you, speak your responses out loud, practice your responses in front of a mirror, maybe even video record yourself. You can use flashcards. You might get in a situation where you don't connect with an interviewer, you may have awkward moments, you may get nervous with certain interviewers. So you want to make sure that you practice enough to be on auto mode when you need to, but also that you rehearse so that you sound natural and authentic. So it's finding that balance. Okay, and we're just going to go through some quick interview tips. Interviews are not a time to be shy, right? You really need to self-promote yourself. So open with positive impact, confidence, smile, eye contact, friendly greeting, being authentic, first impressions, being authentic, let your personality show. Use your body language to show interest. Also really important, avoid distractions, right? That's going to be a focus derailer. So some examples, an obvious one, turn off your cell phone or put it on airplane mode, or don't bring it in the room, don't chew gum, wear less jewelry or be aware of the jewelry that you are wearing. One that is very common is bracelets. So when you're interviewing someone and the bracelet is clanking on the table, right, as the person is talking, that can be very distracting, and you don't want people to be focusing on the distractions. You want them focused on you and your answers and contributions. Another one is just be cautious of your fragrance and how much you use. There are a lot of people that are sensitive to it and could be allergic to it. That would not be a good situation. And then always ask questions at the end of an interview, and always thank the interviewer for the time. And then even more important, well, thank you is always important, always send a thank you email. Some people think that this is not expected anymore, and I can tell you it is very much expected. I actually worked with a site leader that would say, oh, he didn't send a thank you note. That just shows me something about his character. So, you know, it was just something that he noticed and kind of kept tabs on. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm sharing it. So make sure you always send a thank you email. Just some quick tips, you know, in person and virtual, these are very common. I think the high ones for these are arrive early, especially virtual. Make sure you don't have any technical difficulty. You know, check yourself, make sure, you know, check your hair, check your tie, make sure your tie is straightened, make sure you don't have anything in your teeth. How many times have we been at lunch with somebody and then we go into our car and realize we have something green in our teeth, right? So just kind of do that check away. And another key takeaway from this is always be interviewing, right? So on the virtual calls, you may have the tendency to be less formal. Don't be sitting on your couch in a t-shirt, you know, make sure that you are still looking professional and always be interviewing. Okay, Gemba interviews. Every company tour is an opportunity to demonstrate your Gemba presence. So don't miss that opportunity to share what you've observed. So kind of note what they are tracking in their visual management, their interaction with employees. Go into Gemba interviews and tours. Understand that you are not sightseeing. Again, this goes back to always be interviewing. Understand that you are not sightseeing and that you are being evaluated with the questions that you ask, your presence, how you're engaging with people. And then Gemba interviews are great because they provide a way for you to observe the area, the culture, their processes, as well as opportunities and challenges that they may have. So Gemba is a go-see for both sides. So make sure that you are humble as you go through, respectful to others, and the tour guides or other interviewers throughout your day will ask you about your observations and kind of what you learned. So make sure that you speak of those in a positive way, right? And then, you know, find and comment on something positive, always something positive and meaningful at the end. So one of our favorites, right? How do we respond to an adversity or failure question? So, you know, just some quick tips. Obviously, talk about the situation or the problem, why it was a failure and how you handled it, how you communicated to the team, right? Kind of what did you do with that information and how did you get the team on board and move forward, and how you recovered and what was the gift. So failure and adversity is common. It's something we all face. So when somebody asks you for a failure, know that everybody has a failure. Nobody is perfect, right? And then just kind of ask yourself, was it a failure or was it a gift? Continuous improvement is about problem solving and improving. So in every problem, there is a gift, right? There's a real, and that is where the real leadership maturity is, right? When you can talk about it that way. So your focus should be on how you handled it and what you learned and what you do differently because of it, right? How has it changed your approach, your leadership style, the way that you think? And also, people will always remember the way you handle this situation and will forget the actual situation. And that is very, very important, right? You are judged when there are tough failures and hard situations, and it's more about how you react, right? So that's definitely the time to step back, take a few breaths, get your stress out, maybe alone in your office, and then kind of go out and be honest and candid with the team and not focus on blaming and finger pointing, and really focus on how you rally the team to move forward. Okay, we're going to go a little bit into the lean journey. So again, I can't stress enough how important it is the way you tell your story. So the best way to do this is kind of maybe write it out. So everyone loves a good story. So as you think about your framework, put yourself in a good and inspiring place. Think about the beginning of your journey. When did you get excited? When did you start drinking the Kool-Aid and realize that lean was the way? So excitement and enthusiasm is infectious. It's infectious with your teams as well as with your interviewer. So talk about how you transformed your personality throughout your journey, your leadership style. You want to be inspiring and also show inspiration in your story, and also how you inspire your team. So as you go through some key points, right, start with your skills and training. Where did you learn? What was your introduction to lean? And then your practical experience in tool execution. Talk about your experience with lean and practice improve results, lean implementations, Kaizen events, VSMs, and then believe, right? That's the key. When did you drink the Kool-Aid? When did you believe that lean was the way to drive results? Talk about that experience. And then leadership. How do you roll it out? What's your approach? How do you engage and inspire the teams and others? How do you train and develop people? How do you transform and transform a culture transformation? This slide I spent a lot of time on, and I do recommend that you take a picture of it. You know, I looked back at my 20 years of HR, you know, my talent reviews, helping managers with tough performance reviews, leadership training, you know, now hearing what clients are wanting for their candidates. And I really try to summarize the critical leadership skills and lean experiences. So this is an important slide. And for you, I would say, I would recommend that you look at this slide and be reflective, right? Do you know your leadership style? Do you know how you present yourself and how you are perceived? Do you know your impact on others? You know, if no, what feedback do you get? You know, either from your leaders, your teams, or your peers? What are you most often recognized for? What are you the go-to person for? Again, it's really good. So when you're asked, oh, talk to me about your leadership style. I want this slide to kind of help you in a few ways. One, to articulate that, and then two, for you to really understand and think about your leadership style and your impact. I always, with my HR background, always recommend a 360. And if you don't have one at your company, I think it might even be more powerful to actually sit with key people. Who are your stakeholders, your team, your customers, and just ask them, right? Ask them what they think are your strengths, are your development opportunities, are your blind spots, right? So nobody's perfect. Everybody has blind spots. What areas here can you improve in and should kind of focus on? And maybe your next role, you're going to want to try to get that experience. So anyway, I hope you find this slide helpful and impactful. Okay. And then you're always going to want to ask questions at the end of interviewers. So we put together some sample questions that you can ask, right? And some that I'll highlight is, where does the role make impact in the organization? Where are you as a company in your lean journey? How will this role make a difference on that journey? And then what is the culture challenge that you are working with to enable your lean transformation? Their response will tell you, do they recognize that culture is an essential element to the success of lean transformation? So that's a good question. And then really knowing your elevator speech, right? So making sure that you finish strong. It's a sales pitch. It is short and sweet. You want to be able to say this within 30 to 60 seconds, right? So kind of going 1 through 5, what does your audience care about? Focus how you will add value, be positive and persuasive, and again, practice, practice, practice. So you can go on auto drive, but rehearse it so that it sounds natural and authentic. And if there's anything they want to ask that hasn't been covered. So at the end of the interview, you can always ask that, right? So the sales, we've got an example here of an elevator speech. So I'll give you a minute. So after learning more about the company culture and key deliverables, I'm confident I can add value to the organization and make significant impact. I've implemented lean transformations in a variety of situations with hands-on and engagement-focused leadership style, and have demonstrated strong business improvement results. So now you want to talk about what sets you apart, right? Add some specific results to something that they need, one of their specific needs. So something like, I know a key challenge for you is on-time delivery. I improved OTD from 80% to 95% at whatever company and how, get into the how, right? With a VSM and Kaizen event, focusing on where we're losing time, and was able to reduce the lead time by 7%. And just kind of close it with my background. With my background experience, I would be a great fit for this role and organization. I look forward to hearing from you and hopefully joining the team. So that's just an example of, kind of a strong finish, just kind of giving a quick summary of all that you bring to the table. And then just kind of looking back and reflecting, some key takeaways again is making sure that you can tell your story. And by telling your story, I mean those are the examples that you are providing to each interviewing question, right? Every time you respond to an interview question, you're telling a story, right, with that STAR framework. So again, you want to be authentic and speak it with ease and humility. And you also want to focus on the what. So you always want to be focused on your results, and then the how. So the how is the lean methodologies and tools and leadership. And then finish strong and prepare, know your stuff. Go in and be rehearsed, be prepared, know about the company, know kind of what's in the news about their company, everything that you can find out. And then always keep an eye out when you're speaking to make sure that you're not losing your audience, and be able to adapt quickly. And again, finish strong. So we are now to the point of, my thing is frozen. Okay, we are now to the point of questions. So here's just some information on us. Our contact information is over to the left. I highly recommend signing up for our quarterly newsletter. A lot of good industry news, webinar information, articles, libraries to past webinars, and our Kaizen Impact Bundle. and also recommend that you follow us on LinkedIn. So this session today is recorded, and the Q&As will be shared on LinkedIn through our page. So this is an example from our last webinar. We showcased a question and an answer. So we will take some questions and answers and also post them for your reference. So we are going to get into, so I'm going to turn my camera back on. And I am here with Lauren Ransom, and she is going to take us through some of the questions that you have asked. Okay.
We got a lot of great questions. We've got about 5 or so minutes left, so hopefully we can get to at least a couple. And as a reminder, we will be sharing responses both individually by email to those who asked questions, as well as on LinkedIn, and you can view the recording later for anything you might have missed. So again, really great questions. So Jackie was wondering, when in the interview process is the time to share your elevator pitch or your speech, the summary that you mentioned?
That's a good question. I would say most of the time it's at the end, right? That elevator speech is something you want to leave them with. You are always going to have, in addition to that, with your examples, the key points you want to get across, right? And that should hopefully take place in the interview. And then the elevator speech is kind of the end. It's kind of the, hey, great interview. This is why I think I'd be a great fit. And it may be different for each person, right? Like that specific need. And then for the end of the interview is what I would recommend.
Potentially some of it would also be helpful in a thank you email to kind of remind the interviewer of what you bring to the table.
Absolutely.
So Arlene was wondering if there is a limit to the number of bullet points that one should list per job experience.
No, I don't think so. I think for the most powerful and impactful roles that you have, several bullets is fine. And you may have other roles earlier in your career that you will only have a couple bullets. So I would also, if you have a role that has a lot of bullets, just go through and read them and make sure that you need them all, right? Are they all impactful? Are they all important? I definitely have that on my resume. I read it every time. I'm like, nope, I need every single one. And that's okay, as it makes sense.
As long as you don't go over 3 pages, essentially.
Yeah, right.
So another question we have from Stephanie, she says that she has a resume that looks pretty similar to one of the examples that we shared, which is great. And she has a headshot at the top. So she was wondering, she's heard good things about this. She can see the negatives. Do we generally recommend that on a resume?
It's a good question. I know it is very common in Europe. It is not common. I have not seen that a lot. So I would say it's not very common. And I think it could have, I want to think about this a little bit more. I can definitely see some negatives. So let me think about that more. And we will definitely do 2 things. We'll respond to you directly, and then we will showcase it on LinkedIn as part of our Q&A.
Right. And I think if you, Stephanie, can think of maybe more negatives than positives, then I guess we would probably cautiously or recommend leaving it off. And this also segues into another question asked by someone about the difference between your resume and your LinkedIn profile, if they should be identical, if there should be any kind of differences, and what those differences might be. And to that end, I would say on LinkedIn, most people have an image there, have a photo there. So
is that just for the photo? I want to kind of expand that.
Yeah, she'd like to know more about LinkedIn versus a resume.
So LinkedIn photo is very, very common. So I would say that is the more common place to have a photo versus on your resume. And yes, your resume and your LinkedIn profile, the information in it should be very similar. And I think what's really important and what I've seen it 2 ways, right? So LinkedIn, you might not want to put all the bullets and all of the accomplishments. I think the profile should be the same and very powerful. The skills summary should be the same and very powerful. And then the roles, you can just kind of have 1 or 2 paragraphs, you know, kind of describing the role, your purpose, a couple, what you were responsible, revenues, number of employees, number of sites, and then kind of more generic or more just a few paragraphs maybe instead of all of those bullets. I've definitely seen people do it short without losing all of the results.
Yeah, and on LinkedIn, you have the ability to add stuff to a skills section. So I think the formatting sort of changes as you put things in certain positions, you know, on the profile. Most of the other questions, there's a few that I do think would be better answered by email, and if we were to send them off afterwards, just about specifically about formatting and also on cover letters, which we didn't really touch on, but there is sort of a formula that I always recommend when people ask about cover letters that we can, you know, that Jessica and I can come together and maybe recommend via email to everybody on what that might look like. So again, some things from a time perspective, it would be a little easier to answer by email at least. So, and we're here at 3 o'clock. So, you know, any other questions that we missed, just a few more, we'll definitely get back in touch with everyone